I'm Elliot, a writer and marketer. 2 years ago, I found myself recovering from the doldrums of the pandemic, living a very sedentary life. I knew I needed a change, so I started doing triathlons. This year, thanks to a fortunate scheduling quirk, we planned a trip to Italy for the week immediately after finishing my 8-week training plan in anticipation for my first Olympic distance race. This timing perfectly aligns with my preparation, more specifically, my tapering and carb loading week. If you're unfamiliar with these concepts, here's a quick rundown. Tapering is all about giving your body time to rest and recover from the fatigue of intense training. While it's important to maintain optimal fitness, continuing training right up until the race can leave you too exhausted to perform at your best. Typically, endurance athletes will taper for a few days to a few weeks depending on the distance and difficulty of their race. Carb loading focuses on ensuring that your body is well nourished to handle the effort required on race day. Without delving into the science, carbs, or carbohydrates, are stored as an energy source known as glycogen in your muscles. And the more carbs you consume before the race, the more glycogen your muscles can store. Simply put, these extra carbs help sustain your energy throughout the race. And you know what Italy is known for, right? Pasta, pizza, pastry, carbs. So the plan was set. I made a list of all the carbs I wanted to eat, and off we went. In this video, I'm going to share my experience carb loading in Italy and answer an important question. Is traveling during taper week a good idea? This is part 2 in a series I'm calling Project Be Consistent. If you are interested in seeing part 1, which chronicles my 8-week training plan, you can check it out here in the cards and in the link to the playlist below. Now, let's head to Italy. One day after my final workout, we woke up at the crack of 3 a.m. and skipped off to the airport. After a 15-hour travel day, we arrived the next morning in Rome. Our plan is to spend 2 days in Rome and 3 days in a villa in Assisi, and then one more night in Rome before traveling back to Vancouver, just in time for 2 days to rest and prep before the big race. While the main purpose of this trip is to attend our friend's wedding, the second purpose of this trip is to taper and carb load. So, my goal was to eat as much as I could. The general math is that while carb loading, you should consume 8 to 10 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight per day. That means I should aim to consume around 330 to 460 grams of carbs per day for the first 3 days of the trip, and then increase to 530 to 660 grams of carbs per day for the next 3. That sounds like a lot. Now, I'm going to do my best to add up all the carb-heavy meals I had and omit any dishes I don't think have that much carbs, just to keep things simple. On top of that, it's important to note that I'm just grabbing a general estimate. None of this should be taken as science. I repeat, I am not a scientist or a chef, and some of the food, I'm not even sure what the names are, so yeah, that's the kind of video this is. You've been warned. With that aside, let's get to it. Day 1. My Italian adventure kicked off with a delightful lunch of pasta amatriciana, packing in 85 grams of carbs. The whole reason we went to this specific restaurant in the Jewish ghetto neighborhood was to try one of the famous Jewish artichokes, adding in 4 grams. Of course, I washed it all down with a refreshing beer, contributing 26 grams. It was good to know that beer has more carbs than wine. Dessert was our first of many gelato, offering 42 grams of carbs. On the way back to the hotel, I grabbed one of the world-famous Italian sandwiches from a popular place called Al Antico Venanio, which added another 46 grams of carbs. We went back to our hotel for a quick nap to recover from the travel and the food before trudging out again to enjoy the evening. For dinner, I had a carbonara, 85 grams of carbs, shared half a tiramisu with my wife, 17 grams, another beer, 26 grams, and a second round of gelato, 42 grams. I was nice and full and had managed to hit my target carb intake for the day. Can I do it again tomorrow? Day 2. The next morning started with a traditional Roman breakfast, a maritozzi pastry, 23 grams of carbs, a cappuccino, 4 grams, and some biscuits, 12 grams. For lunch, I opted for spaghetti alla vongole, spaghetti with clams, 85 grams, accompanied by an obligatory beer, 26 grams, and finished it off with gelato in a cone, 51 grams. Later, we meandered over to the Trastevere neighborhood, and I got one of the famous Trapezzino, a delightful pizza pocket, 46 grams. Then we went on a long hot walk to the Vatican and through some wonderful Renaissance piazzas before arriving back at our hotel for another nap. Dinner was another pasta feast with a Roman classic, cacio e pepe, 82 grams, which was probably the best pasta I had in Italy so far. I also got another beer, 26 grams for the carbs specifically, and half a burrata, 1 gram, which was just, dare I say it, heavenly. Of course, I ended the day with more gelato, 42 grams, which also happened to be the best gelato I had in Italy so far. An evening of best. But how did I do on the carb loading? Let's check the tally. A day well spent with plenty of pasta and carbs. I consumed 398 grams, well within the range. Celebrate, but the next day, carbs may be harder to come by. Day 3. Our travel day to Assisi started with a quick breakfast of cream-filled croissant, 25 grams, cappuccino, 4 grams, half a meringue, 8 grams, and half a cookie, 10 grams, before we headed off to the train station. All in all, it was a 5-hour journey from Rome to Assisi. Upon arriving at the villa for the wedding, dinner was a barbecue affair. Unfortunately, it wasn't very carb heavy, but I did enjoy some bread, 14 grams, 2 beers, 52 grams, wine, 3.8 grams, and a tiramisu, 32 grams. After dinner, we did discover these Nutella cookies, 36 grams, and focaccia flavored Pringles, 4 grams. Carbs were a bit sparse, and even with the extra snacking, I missed my mark this day with only 188.8 grams. To be expected, but all is good. More meals to come. Day 4. Today, our wedding party had plans to explore the town of Assisi. Before heading out, I had some room bread with jam, 56 grams. Then, while touring the town, I, of course, had to grab a gelato, 42 grams, to get a little pick-me-up for being on my best behavior in church. We continued our tour, got caught in the rain, and then we took a break to grab some lunch. Lunch featured a prosciutto sandwich, 45.5 grams, and finally some sort of craft beer, aka not Peroni's, 26 grams. More gelato followed, 42 grams. I was getting adventurous with this one. I literally got licorice flavor, and you know what? It's pretty good. Forgive me, I have sinned. Before we returned to the villa, we enjoyed a glass of wine, 3.8 grams, focaccia bread, 21 grams, some salty meat and cheese, which probably had little to no carbs but was so good, and a macchiato, 1 gram. Dinner was the highlight of the evening that started with a gnocchi making class where we then got to enjoy our creation, 156 grams. I washed that down with a beer, 26 grams. For dessert, I tried zuppa anglaise, 34 grams, which is like trifle. And if you're like me, and you don't know what trifle is, well, it's a thing of little value or importance. We stayed up late this night, watched a lightning storm roll in and out, and I stayed up for about an hour extra alone in the kitchen, snacking on Nutella, 21 grams, jam, 13 grams, and feta durette, 39 grams, which are like these Melba toast things. An excellent day of eating. There seemed to be a little of everything, and it all tallied up to 526.3 grams. Mission accomplished. Well, for this day at least. Day 5. Today is a big day, the wedding day. The morning started with a cappuccino, 4 grams, and biscuits, 12 grams. The groom's father treated us to a variety of Middle Eastern sweets, 40 grams. Lunch included 2 ham sandwiches, 96 grams, and a beer, 26 grams. Not sure about the science of carb loading with beer, but I wonder if all the alcohol may have negative effects on my race. I guess we'll never know. Then we had the wedding, and afterwards, I snacked on some hors d'oeuvres, 28 grams. Finally, we sat down for the wedding dinner, which included a couple of arancinis, 10.8 grams, bread, 14 grams, farro salad, 35.5 grams, risotto, 54 grams, and potatoes, 9 grams. There was also a meat dish there as well. It was really good, but sadly, no carbs, so we don't need to talk about it any further. For dessert, there was this really awesome millefeuille cake, 18.5 grams. Yes, while I did consume 347.8 grams of carbs, one must believe that I burned all of it off on the dance floor that night. And let's not forget an impromptu workout session that might have been detrimental to my tapering. One will find out later. Day 6. Well, our stay at the villa is over. After a final breakfast of beans, 10 grams, pita, 16 grams, baklava, 14.5 grams, and what I believe is called babusha, 20 grams, we caught the train back to Rome. The funny thing about traveling in Italy is that you never really know how long a journey will take. What we expected to be a 3-hour direct ride back to the city ended up taking over 5 hours thanks to some delays and a mid-ride train switch halfway through. So, we didn't get back into Rome until late that evening. Still, we made the most of our last night, and I did all I could to load up on carbs in just one meal. Dinner in Rome was a carb lover's dream, with a beer, 26 grams, anchovy pizza, 99 grams, supplì, 34.4 grams, and pasta marinara, 98 grams. Of course, I capped it all off with gelato, 42 grams. An excellent night of indulgence before heading back home gave me a total of 359.9 grams. Day 7. And just like that, our Italian trip was over. It's time to say goodbye to the humidity and the old stuff and return to Vancouver. But not before we had one last breakfast. Our last morning in Italy included a cappuccino, 4 grams, and a cream-filled donut, 58 grams. At the airport, I enjoyed a final Italian meal. Half a croquette, 3.9 grams, half an arancini, 2.7 grams, pizza, 50 grams, and lasagna, 35 grams. For the flight, I had a chocolate croissant, 33 grams, and half a donut, 20 grams, with additional pasta on board, 49 grams. And let's not forget about the A&W burger, 35 grams, and fries, 54 grams I got during layover. It was a sweet ending to my Italian adventure, giving me a total of 344.6 grams. Although the last few days in transit made it hard to get all the carbs in, it doesn't change the fact that when I did get some carbs in, it was delicious. Italy turned out to be a great trip, but I did return real sore and tired. I'm really thankful for the extra day of rest before the race. Do I recommend going to Italy for a taper carb loading experience? Yes, but you should actually plan out the meals a little better than I did, and make sure you also have a few days to rest. Of course, once I got home, I was able to fill up a bit more and spend the whole day Saturday recovering before getting my race package and dropping off my bike on Sunday. Could I have been more rested and carved up? Yes, I could. But I could also say the same about training and pretty much every factor of my preparation. Life is life, and I'm as good as I'm going to be. So here it comes. The race. Tune in to the next episode of the series, Project Be Consistent, and find out how I did during my first Olympic distance triathlon race. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and check out some of my other travel videos in this playlist here.